Welcome back, everyone. This is the weekly performance report. As this says, send the gift of cup of coffee capital this holiday season. Or you can just merely go over to the Substack and subscribe. I will say, I thought about reserving this for the end of the year, but I'm kind of chatty now, so I'll just say things now. I'm going to keep this YouTube channel, at least for 2025, but being that I'm essentially shadow banned from the get-go, just the analytics and metrics for my channel took a nosedive once I started posting Substack on this YouTube channel. So I've been pretty much shadow banned, and interestingly enough, my Substack has grown more in the last 6 to 9 months that I've been doing this than this actual YouTube channel has, which is absolutely absurd. And so the chance that this channel ever gets monetized at the rate of growth that it is well, it's just never going to happen, or it's going to be years into the future. And as such, I'm not really incentivized to do it besides the momentum of doing it for 2 years. And initially, it was going to be predominantly, the whole cup of coffee thing was predominantly going to be YouTube with a little Substack on the side, but I much prefer the writing format than the rambling format, even though I do not mind a nice tangent and ramble. But to go publish something and write it out, to then give a less articulate and windy explanation of what I've just more succinctly wrote, kind of seems silly. And I'm not going to make two different formats for pretty much the same information. I could do this and then have more images, or the same amount of images, and talk over it, as opposed to doing this, but that's just more work. And you could say, it's front end loaded, and you put in the work, and then you build an audience, and then you get ad revenue or this or that, and so on and so forth. And great. And I also don't think that there's really much crossover from YouTube to Substack. And probably the more times I say Substack, the more shadow banned this video and subsequent videos get, because then the whole algorithm, it hurts my inertia, and so they stop putting out the videos to as many people, and so on and so forth. And it's a positive feedback loop. And nonetheless, this little send the gift of cup of coffee capital this holiday season is nice. And I can't really expect anyone to pay me for something that's free, so as nice as that would be, but I have just basic economics, even though a lot of people really aren't the homo economicus of a rational being, because you could say, well, financially appreciating somebody makes a lot of sense. So whatever, I'm not going to beg. So there's that. Another thing I wanted to say. Actually, let's get through this and maybe I'll remember to say it afterwards. Noticeable activities over last week. I bought St. Joe, new, which is new. I mean, it's both the name and the ticker symbol. And then OGI and CRON, so Organigram and Chrono. I bought them. They're Canadian names. We'll get into that in a moment. I sold LB, Landbridge. I sold Landbridge predominantly because I was trying to enter tactically at the 200-day moving average. It broke that support, and thus I sold the position. So you can see it at that blue line, 200-day moving average. It broke down from it. It's bouncing now. Where it goes, I don't know. It actually seems like a good place for it to bounce. Shake out the weak hands, which I was. But I never fooled myself into thinking I was a strong hand, so is what it is. Then we have this. I've been looking into the Canadian LPs, companies. Oh, yeah. And not only is Substack absolutely destroying this channel by me saying it and showing you words where it says it, because right here it says, well, I thought it said, that's why you actually notice the screen smaller, because the Google search bar says Substack in it. And then I'm pretty sure it says Substack somewhere in here, I thought. But maybe it doesn't. I used to have some kind of disclaimer. Maybe not. Well, nonetheless. But the other thing destroying this channel is that I keep saying cannabis. And, well, God forbid. So, with that out of the way, it's amazing to hear... Oh, nope. My apologies. I've been looking into Canadian LPs companies more and more as of late, especially on a relative basis compared to the US MSOs. For those who follow me on Twitter, you should have seen my postings. For those not following me, why not? So I posted, I don't know, I do know because it says December 11th, I posted this. To think that a basket of Tier 1 Canadian cannabis stocks beat out a basket of Tier 1 US cannabis stocks year to date. That's seriously worth thinking about. Not just how it happened, but how you missed it in all probability. And they did. A basket of stocks that no one practically recognizes the existence of, and when they do recognize its existence, they either are apathetic or talk shit on it, somehow beat out everything that everybody was mentally masturbating to and feverishly cheerleading over and all sentimentally excited about and blah, 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 blah. Like, beautiful, just beautiful. My other posting was on December 19th. I think I might even have another posting or two along this topic, but I don't know. Relatively speaking, and upon a cursory glance, this got a lot of engagement, FYI. I mean, relative for me. Actually, it did. 7,552 views, and another one was 876. That's above average by far for me. This one actually got a lot of engagement, some good conversation out of it, some interacted with an individual that I very much like. Well, that I like very much. I should reserve that. Now I'm taking it back, so now it sounds insulting. It was a compliment, and then it became an insult, nonetheless. So I said, relatively speaking, and upon a cursory glance, I don't understand the preoccupation of investors with the Tier 1 MSOs, such as Curaleaf and TruLeaf, while overlooking the Tier 1 LPs, such as Cronos and OGI. Cronos is a net growing revenue 30% year over year with a stronger inflecting margin profile. Doesn't have all the back tax drama, not burning cash, and is gaining market share. And it is amazing because, people have anchoring bias and they're lazy and don't update their thinking, as you'll see me comment on in the conversations I had in regards to this, if you look at the thread. And people are saying that Cronos is burning cash. And then a much more intelligent individual that I respect and very much appreciate in this sector said historically, he's the only one, like, my God, can people not quantify and modify their language? And he said historically they burn cash. And the answer is yes. But that's a different statement than saying they are burning cash. Notice past tense and present tense, and seemingly a lot of people can't figure that out. And all they have to do to not be wrong is say one extra word, historically. Because then there's implications with that which do need to be addressed and thought about and reflected on and incorporated in more of a comprehensive model. So, yes, historically they are cash burning. But my whole thing was the juxtaposition with both of these tweets between Canadian LPs, the Tier 1 Canadian LPs, and the Tier 1 US MSOs. It's amazing to hear these hour-long cannabis conversations and forecasts for 2025, and yet I barely hear a single thing about Canada. Or they mention Canada for a quick 30 seconds and then move on. It's worth noticing that when most people say that they follow the cannabis sector, what they're really saying is that they follow the US cannabis sector. And what they're really saying, I didn't write this down, and what they're really saying when they say that they follow the US cannabis sector is that they're following the Tier 1 and Tier 2 cannabis sectors. And when they're really saying is that they're following the publicly traded Tier 1 and Tier 2 US cannabis companies. Which is really to say that they're following the minority of what's going on, both in the US and both on a broader global aspect. And the only time people want to bring up international stuff is like, oh, a little speculation of Kronos Curaleaf merger. I think that was last year. And then, oh, okay, now they want to bring up, not Cresco, Kronos. Did I say? I don't know what I said. The Curaleaf Kronos merger that would help fix the balance sheet. And they all look at it from this biased as hell perspective of that would help Curaleaf. It's like, well, what about Kronos? And then, well, presumably Kronos gets absorbed and subsumed by Curaleaf. And then, I don't remember the details, but it's like, just hearing that, most people would just think, not knowing any details, including myself, that Curaleaf would be buying Kronos, not Kronos buying Curaleaf. And it's just, I don't know. And the only time they want to talk about international stuff, which Canada technically is, is inter of the nation of the U.S., is, well, there was a bunch of hype and excitement around Germany, and then that all faded away and has disappeared, and then really no talk about the UK, what's going on there, or Australia, or Israel. Just, nope, nothing. Like, because I don't know what, I looked some, but I don't have an internationals brokerage account, so I really don't care, and I'm not going to set one up just for reasons I'm not going to get into now. Nothing against them, it's just, I'm just focusing where I'm focusing. And there's like, some of them are publicly traded companies on other exchanges that I would think you could access with the correct broker. But, I mean, this sector is still struggling with a bunch of people on Robinhood who can't buy these names because they're on Robinhood. So, I don't know. It's just interesting. Oh, I focus on the cannabis sector. It's like, oh, you focus on like 10 names in the United States that are publicly traded. And it's like, yes. It's like, okay, yeah, because, I was thinking about this, and it's like, can you imagine talking about semiconductors and then, was it ASML in Europe, or not talking about them, or not talking about Taiwan semiconductors, or not talking about NVIDIA, or not talking about other names, or, if you're in tobacco, if you work at the desk at some sell-side institution, and like, oh, I follow the tobacco sector. It's like, oh, what about, Swedish Matches, or I think BTI, I think, British Tobacco. It was like, oh, no, I don't follow those. It's like, what? And I mean, there was some good post hoc rationalization as to why, because, well, the U.S. can't sell outside of the U.S. really, unless they set up stuff outside of the U.S. in a weird kind of fungible way, and then it's like, okay, but I don't know, it's just very odd. You follow the mining sector, but then you don't follow Canadian mining names, or vice versa. Just seems odd to me. Oh, it's fascinating to hear a host ask a guest what companies they think have the best optionality to make moves. I'm paraphrasing here. I was going to look up the actual wording, but it doesn't matter. Sentimentally true, factually false. What companies that they think have the best optionality to make moves in 2025, and yet somehow the company with, just made this number up, it's somewhere around here, $800 million on its balance sheet doesn't come into the conversation. One might argue, well, you could be like, well, they haven't done anything yet. It's like, okay, was the question who has optionality, or who has a combination of willingness to act with optionality? And you could say, well, for all intents and purposes, who cares if you don't have the willingness to act? Well, the $800 million is there for a reason. And then the question is when and how and why and when they execute, if they ever, or there'll be some Sandridge, Peabody type situation where they're just piling up money, and then they either do nothing with it or they do something stupid with it, which is, this is the cannabis sector, so there's a good chance of that, and along with some concerns about management and such things. So, but you think you would at least mention them in passing and then dismiss them because they haven't done anything anyway. And then you have Organigram with tons of money, not $800 million, but I mean, ample cash on the balance sheet. And they're getting another infusion in, I think, in the next month or two with more cash. So it's like, nope, not even a mention. Like, okay, whatever. So with that said, I ended the week down 2.06%. So I am up on my OGI and Kronos purchase and pretty much down on every other purchase I've made, I don't know, year to date. Up on the Green Thumb and Grusiv, Grown Rogue and High Tide and Elf's hanging in there. And then, Braskem, down 20% on that. Look, the Siboney Stillwater and the Braskem was enter a leg into the trade, and then if it falls 50%, double up. So we're 40% of the way to doubling up on Siboney and Braskem. And then A-Mark, my goodness, not quite sure what's going on there, but is what it is. And then St. Joe, the whole home building sector hasn't been holding up the best, especially in the last few weeks. It's really taking a dive, and it seems Joe participates on a little bit of the upside when they're ripping and then participates on the downside when they're not doing well, so that's always nice. Then Valeris is, well, a disappointment thus far. Which is to say, I mean, that's dead money. Not just dead money, down 30% money for, call it a year and a half. So that's interesting. So with that said, yeah, the ramble that I was going to do. So I was with these people, and an individual, I'm being very vague here, so excuse my lack of exciting storytelling, bought 15 double patty cheeseburgers and I want to say a large fry, but maybe it was a medium. And then he's like, yeah, this is $195. And then a few people, they act shocked. They were like, $195 for cheeseburgers and fries? It's like, it's just fascinating. Like, I could articulate this much better, but I'm not going to give it the time. It's like, yeah, when I heard $195 for 15 people, I'm like, so that's like $12 to $15, like $12 plus tax per meal. Why does that sound so egregious? And it's because of this human propensity to radically reduce things and then provide some headline number in that reduction and then manufacture indignation and emotional rile out of it. $195 for 15 people? It's like big number compared to small number. But it's like, well, what's the math? I want to say it's $12. So 195 divided by 15 is, $13. So that'd be $13 including their portion of the tax. Like, I don't know what people think things cost, but I don't think it was a function of that. It was this big number, small number, and then reduce small number even more to not make it numbers, which is burgers and fries. And it's like, yeah, it was pretty much $12 plus tax. It's like, why is that surprising? And it's because of how people frame things. These perceptual biases, they're not even cognizant they have. And if you inform them, they could give two shits about. And then people like that, I'm not saying these specific people, but people like that then go into the stock market. And then it's like, well, what do you think is going to happen to them? And the answer is they lose their money. And that's if they can get past the degenerate gambling. I retweeted something with a comment about how I don't know, the comment was something like, "Oh, you feel like the market gods hate you, and when you buy, the stock falls, and when you buy puts, the stock goes up, and you can't win for losing," and stuff like that. And I mean, it was nice, good trolling, engagement, commiserating, validating their viewer base. So, good for them. And they have a large number of followings. I mean, relative to what I think of as large when it comes to followings. And I was like, no, that's just basic behavioral psychology and a sentimental and emotionally provoked individual acting on their emotions. Like, they don't need a hug, because it said, "I'll give you a hug if you're one of these people," or something like that. And this hug emoji. It's like, these people don't need hugs. They don't need, like, you need to afflict the afflict the comforted, or afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. It's like, no, like, they need a boot in the ass. Tell them to get their shit together. I think that's the third time I've said shit on this. And because, yet again, I've just been like, I guess they'll ban me or something. Like, I'm very disenfranchised with this channel not performing. I mean, I did not expect anything. All I need to do is start talking about PayPal and AMD and Alibaba. This channel would take off, especially if I didn't put it in the format of Substack. Boy, howdy. And that's not me. That's not my style. That's not my grind or hustle or interest, or I wouldn't be passionate about that. Oh, I could do it if I could actually do it, i.e. I'm the kind of person that if I'm not passionate about something or driven like innately to do something, I absolutely hate doing it, which the whole funnel marketing and this and that, and or making a separate slide deck instead of posting the Substack, because, well, that would help. I just despise doing it, so I don't, and I suffer as a consequence. So be it. But I can't remember what I was saying. But comfort the afflicted, afflict the comfortable. So, like, they need a book on behavioral finance. They need to get. I think my Twitter account says, "Come for the actionable insight, stay for the self-actualization." And most people cannot even really entertain any self-actualization. They want to read some, whatever that woman is who writes those books, Shama, or women love her books. I don't know. And it's like, they just read it just to mentally masturbate and feel good about themselves. And like, go ahead and sit down and try to have a philosophical conversation about what they read. You'll see the disaster. If you want to not get any or this or that, like, go ahead and have that conversation. And before I get labeled as sexist, go ahead and talk to your buddies who listen to a Jordan Peterson podcast and like, yeah, and like, oh, well, let's actually talk about whatever the podcast was about. It's like, oh, no. Or a Matt Walsh or a Ben Shapiro or practically anything. They have a TikTok's worth of information. They regurgitate a couple talking points. They have no counterpoints to any counterpoint you really provide. They'll go off in the weeds with some crazy metaphor to try to, well, it's like, and it's like, no, tell me what it is, not what it's like. And it's just terrible. It's just terrible. And that's why people don't do well in life in general, but they're so habituated and delusional that, and smart enough to be able to externalize the blame, frame shifting it, and this and that, Darvo, deny, accuse, reverse victim, offender, that they'll never be self-actualized. They have no, you have, I've been trying to remember these terminologies because it helps better articulate something that takes me more time to ramble on, which is, well, not exactly helpful. So you have, what is it called? Well, you'll have to, I cannot multitask. I'm looking this up, so you'll have to pardon me. Oh, here we go. You have revealed preference, and then you have stated preference. So, stated preference is, I want to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And then the revealed preference, you know, the whole talk is cheap type dynamic, or actions speak louder than words, or watch what people do, not what they say. That's all embedded in this stated preference versus revealed preference dynamic. And they'll say, I want to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, but then they eat a bunch of crap. They don't eat healthy food. They don't take supplements. They don't exercise. They don't get good sleep, quality sleep, sleep in alignment with their circadian rhythm, all of that. It's just like, if you hook them up to a polygraph test, I believe them. And I believe that they believe what they're saying, which is the most dangerous of it all. Like, they actually buy their bullshit and don't recognize it's bullshit. And so much for the healthy part. And then wealthy is like, okay, what are you doing? Are you saving your money? Are you investing your money? Or you're pursuing other avenues and revenue streams? Like what are you doing? Like, well, not only are they not doing any of that, I mean, when T-bills and money market funds were paying 5%, I talked to multiple people that have decent amount of money in their checking account or their saving account, and they're making 0.05% instead of 5%. $10,000, I don't know what it is, a rounding error at 0.05%. And $10,000 at 5%, though, is $250. That's a meaningful amount of money. I mean, they're not going to pay me. They're not going to give me $250. So, but they won't take the action. So it's omission versus commission. And did I say $250? 5% of $10,000 is $500. Okay, so they're giving up $500 a year. Many of them did. I talked to them. I'm like, just put in a money market fund. Do this, do that. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't take an hour out of their day to make $500. And it's like, okay, so healthy, wealthy. Okay, so not only are you not pursuing these avenues to make more money, you know, not going back to college or whatever. I mean, just investing in the S&P, this and that. Not only are they not doing that, they're then blowing their money on dumb stuff they don't need, this and that, blah, blah, blah. You know, getting a new vehicle every year, let's say, which, I mean, if you can afford it, sure, but then the question becomes, what does it mean to afford? And I guess, I mean, it's all line of credit, and then they're paying interest on top of that for this perpetual revolving new vehicle every year dynamic. And then so they're blowing money, so then they're not saving money or investing money, and so they're just doing it all wrong. And then wise. So they don't really read, they don't educate themselves, they're not practicing or following any disciplines to educate themselves on to become experts in the field, which might correlate with wealthy as well. And one could even say healthy, because maybe they're actually passionately pursuing something in a flow state, and it's rewarding psychologically, and it's de-stressing. So there's all those dynamics, but it's like wise. It's like, no. They just TikTok scroll and watch a lot of Netflix. It's like, okay, so that's the stated preference versus revealed preference. And that's really worth thinking about, how people conduct themselves versus how they say they wish to conduct themselves. Because ultimately, this is one hell of a tangent, so I'll end it here. You know, we don't rise often in life to our expectations. We fall to our training. And most people don't even have training. They have, I don't know, barely sentient autopilot behavioral patterns. I wouldn't even call it training. There's no consciousness. It's just aimlessly drifting through life in some pre-programmed fashion, and then they get the results they get, which seemingly is better than, one could argue, than what our ancestors have, I suppose, in some dynamics, air conditioning and the house and the phone and all these nice things, and we can communicate to each other like I'm doing with you now, but it's not all good. And Well, I hate to end it on such a dire note, but that's that. I've rambled on long enough. Most of you aren't even listening. So thank you for watching, and until next time.